Thank you everyone for coming. This is Quinn Stanford. He's going to teach you all about the Magnum tractors.
Like I said, I'm Quentin Stanford. I'm the Precision Ag Specialist at Progressive Tract and Implement. We're going to start out with the new Magnum Series tractors, and then we're going to kind of change it up a little. We're going to jump into Afs Connect since they kind of overlap. And then if we want to get into legacy guidance and setting up guidance and A/B lines and stuff like that, we'll jump into that, and then we'll move. We have 2 simulators downstairs, and we got 2 tractors outside with guidance. We can go to either or both if y'all want. This is Mr. Matt Dorsey with CNH. He's our high horsepower specialist. He's going to start you off. We also have Kendall, Mark, and John from CNH here today. This as well. So, thank you.
All right. So, in model year 2020, we basically got a new body style, for lack of a better term, Magnum. It's got different grille, different hood, whole new cab, some different electrical architecture. Really upgraded version of our classic Magnum. So, with that being said, transmission, engine, rear end, all that, it's been around for about 10 years now. It's proven. Got millions of hours runtime. This is by no means a go to the field first time prototype rig here. That's the inside of the luxury cab. We have a deluxe and luxury cab offering. The deluxe is just going to be cloth seat. It's still a really nice tractor. It's not going to have the active seat like this. It's not going to be leather. The floor mat, of course, is optional either way. The armrest over here will not be leather. It'll be just a vinyl, more or less. But the armrest, display, and A-post monitor will all be the same regardless. This is high level overview of the armrest. So this tractor, you can do anything you want to in the display, or you can do most anything you don't want to on the armrest. In other words, I can hit this encoder right here, A, the big knob. If I push down on that and scroll it around, I can work my air conditioner, telephone, radio, hydraulic remotes. I can do hitch settings, all kinds of stuff, get to it through that encoder. Knob over on the right, that's just the hitch position, just like always. So you set it on number 2, it'll still raise all the way up, it'll drop down to 2 and stop. Anything orange is to do with propulsion. So over on the multifunction handle, that button on the left, that toggle switch, that's some different ranges in your CVT. You got 3 ranges. You got forward and reverse. Then I don't know if you can see that little knob barely underneath. That would scroll your speed up or down in your range. We got our split throttle. So with the split throttle, you can set your maximum RPM and RPM droop. So it's, if you've been in John Deere, it's kind of similar to that, where you got the throttle and you set the IVT lever. It's pretty similar in operation. It's really a little easier to explain in the cab, but those other orange buttons, that's your minimum and maximum RPM. The one with the 3 lights, we can set an aggressiveness. So like with 3 lights on, it's all the way aggressive. It's going to snatch and grab and go. That's really the way most people prefer it. Down to 1 light's like if you're easing around in a haylight or something, you know. Yellow buttons are for the PTO. Other buttons down on the bottom, that's MFD. So we got auto MFD, diff lock, all that's down there. It's all pretty self-explanatory. Still got the 4 hydraulic levers. While we're on the subject of the armrest, I need to put a little better slide together for this. If you open the armrest console, the red pad, you can set your EHR flow, your remote flow. You can set draft control, hitch height, hitch raise rate. There's some knobs under there, so you don't have to go digging through the display. So, especially if you got a hired hand on a tractor and they're calling you confused about, think something's running a little too slow or fast or whatever, we can just always remind them, hey man, just open that up and switch it over to number 1 and toggle it down. It's really easy. And And this tractor is kind of made for the guy that, either you want to play around in the display or you don't. The only thing you really got to get in the display for sure, as far as just most operations, is in the guidance page. I mean, you'll still have to get there to set your AB line or put your heading in, whatever. So this here is the page. I know it's kind of hard to read, but it's in your brochure. It's in that spec brochure that's got that one there with the blue sky in it. The Magnum, there's actually two frame sizes. We got the mid-range Magnum, they call it, and the large frame Magnum. So the mid-range is going to be 240 and down. We got CVT and power shift options. It's a smaller engine. It's a 6.7 liter engine. It's very much so related to the engine like in a Dodge truck. They developed parts of that with Cummins. Obviously, heavier duty version in here, heavier block and heavier pistons and all, but they are related. They're cousins. It's a lighter tractor. As you can see, the average shipping weight is 21,500 pounds on those tractors. Ballasted out with duals and all, they're going to be heavier than that, or if you had some big singles. But that's just the average shipping weight. Whereas if you look over at the 250, which is the smallest large frame, it's 28,600 pounds. That's all in axles, transmission housings, gears. It's a heavier tractor. The way I'd like to break it down, the 240 and down, think of that as like an 8-row or a small 12-row. Whereas the larger frame, that's going to be like your 12-row wide stuff. It's bigger equipment. But if you look, the lift capacity on the mid-range Magnum, it's still on up there with a quick hitch, 13,000 pounds. So it's not like it won't pick up anything, but it is a little lighter tractor. Which, depending on your application, may be what you want. It's also got a little bit shorter wheelbase, just a couple of inches. The hydraulic flow is a little more limited on the mid-range, 41 gallons a minute. This slide's actually out of date, so on the, and I apologize, I didn't notice it. We've dropped our 44 gallon a minute pump, so now it's 59 gallon a minute and up on the 250 and up. So on a planter, drill, something with a big fan, you probably want to consider more so going to the heavier Magnum. But I mean, 41 gallons a minute, you can run your average vacuum planter. It just kind of depends on what you got going on. You'd have to really get with your dealer and see what they think. At that point, you might be the option where you might think about getting a PTO drive pump or something. It just kind of depends on the application. So moving up to the big boys, the 340 and up, it's got a little bit heavier rear end, not much. Most people don't even know it. And what's actually different is the ring gear is just a little wider, like a 1/4 inch wider. It is made to handle more power. You do have the option for the 5-inch axle in the 340, I believe this year. 380 and up, it's got a 5-inch bar axle. It's real heavy duty. We do now have a Magnum 400. The Magnum 400 is power shift, 21 speed. The actual boosted rated horsepower is the same as the 380. The gross horsepower, we rated at 400, but the 380 will boost up to the same power. So basically, you either pick the CVT or the power shift. The 21 speed power shift, though, it's really nice. It's got some different splits in it. I hadn't been around them a lot, but the couple interactions I've had with them and the customer had them, they really, really liked it. For the power shift. So on the big ones, as you see, you progress up in weight. It's like your average shipping weight on the 380 Magnum without tracks, 32,000 pounds. So we're 10,000 pounds heavier than the mid-range Magnum, and then the package is not a whole lot bigger. Again, just depending on the application, but this, if you're going to dual up and be on 12 row, you'll probably want like a 250 or up, just kind of depending on what you're doing. Now, if you're 12-30 mid-range Magnum, it'd probably handle most things. You might have to have assist wheels, and it's really not so much to do with the lift, it's just the front end and turning. Because we can actually get that 4.75 suspended axle on the mid-range Magnum, which used to be basically the standard option on the bigger ones. And it's a heavy axle, it'll handle a lot of weight. I think, memory slipping me, I think it'll handle like 15,000 pounds or something on the front. It's a good axle. I would not shy away from a mid-range Magnum in a lot of applications, but again, that's when you really probably want to work with your dealer and just see what you got. Because some people run them and love them, and some people say, "Man, I wish I had the heavier one." You know, I'm never going to tell you that you don't want more horsepower or more weight. You know, it just depends on what you're doing. Is there any other questions about any of this while we're here? And that's all in the brochure. Please take all that with you. And then the Case IH website, they've done some updates to it lately, going in there and configuring the tractor or anything. It's pretty good, and you can pick your tire sizes, and it'll tell you what goes with what. And if you're like me, I get a lot more just going on the computer and reading something or in the book. So, but I'd be glad to try to answer any question you got here. Back to lift capacity, see the 250 standard 14,000 pound lift. When you get up like to the 310, we're at 15,900 pounds and steadily going up to 20,000. So this slide, I just kind of stuck this in here. We now offer some of these very high Flexion tires, as long as the increased Flexion. So you can run them at a lower tire pressure and still carry the same load, especially on, some of these sugar canes or, buckshot, mud, rice, whatever. You can have more footprint on the ground with those tires. That does make a difference in how the tractor's going to perform versus a standard radial. I stuck this in here kind of in a hurry this morning, so it's kind of crude, but these tire options are basically the same on the mid-range and the full-size Magnum. But like on the front end on singles, we can go all the way up to 600, which actually we can go to a 1,000 LSW on the front end on the 380s and 400s. I was looking at the price book, it looked like they'd add them to the 340s unbeknownst to me. But when you get that 1,000 on the front, you got a lot of rubber on it. It'll float. That's also an option with the road track too. I'm kind of skipping over the road track, but so with the road track, we can get you the big belts and the 1,000 series tires on the front if you want to go that route. That option hadn't been out in a while. So like our common, say your more common offering is going to be like that 420, 85, 34 with duals. Well, you come back here, you get a 480, 80, 50 is what that would go with. Or like if you went with a 670 R30, well, you could go with a 620 single or like a 710 single. 710 single, that's like what's on a Stiker. That's a tire. That's the flotation. Which, Progressive, I'm sure they can more than help you picking out your right tires for your applications here. Like where I live, we're always going to have the 420, 85, 34s mostly, or the 480, 30s. We're going to have 480, 80, 50s in row crop. So the multi-function handle, that's our new handle. You can program buttons 5, 6, 7, and 8 to do whatever you want. You can mess with the programming a little bit on the remotes down here for the sign the remotes. Normally just leave them on 1 and 2. That's your hitch, express, raise. And that is a throttle unless you turn on the APM field mode that basically turns into a hydrostat and a power shift, and it basically is a hydrostat lever on CVT. So you set your throttles with the split throttle we looked at, and then when you reach up there and drop it in gear, it won't move until you push that propulsion handle forward. It's basically like a combine, best comparison I have. Now obviously it's not a hydrostat transmission, but that's the way it functions. Just best comparison. So if you happen to look at a carryover 20 versus a 21, we did already kind of change the handle. The green is the new handle. The reason being, the older handle is fine for most people. I didn't ever really hear any complaints about it, but it's the most comfortable when it's like a wide open throttle. So that one, they kind of changed the angle to where, especially on CVT, if you had it back, it fits your hand a little more comfortable. But I wouldn't tell you not to buy a 20 over that handle, because whenever I drove them, I never heard any complaints about that. That's just a little difference in the luxury cab and the deluxe cab. See, the deluxe cab just got the black pad. The luxury cab is a red leather. One thing about this new armrest, if you notice down there at the simulator, it's easier to see. That bottom part is actually metal. That plastic's real heavy. I know in the past on some of our classic Magnums, you've probably seen the armrest broke or whatever. Well, that one, I'm not going to say you can't break it, but it's the quality level's way up. It's really nice. New pad there. Let's see, don't waste too much of y'all's time. There's just what I already talked about. It kind of points to what they'll do. Joystick is an option. You really see them more common in the mid-range Magnum with a loader. You could run, like if you had a front hitch for whatever reason, which I doubt anybody down here's got one. I ain't never seen but a couple ever. But anyway, you could run your front hitch. And as you see, you can program a remote. So that's a really slick setup if you have a front end loader. That's more what I talked about there. Just like I said, orange is propulsion. There's number 4 is the encoder. 13 is your PTO. We can run the PTO without you being in the seat, but you got to hit that button there with the check mark. Tell the tractor, hey, I'm getting out of the seat. Which, most people don't get a tractor like this to put it on a relift, but you could if you needed to. Okay, so the monitor is the new Pro 1200. It's very similar to the Pro 700, only it's about 10 times easier to use. You can go out there and start pressing buttons and figure out what you're doing, and in about 30 minutes, you probably won't have to ask any questions. Okay, it's real intuitive. It's Android based. I always say, it's kind of like an iPhone, because I carry an iPhone, but it's Android based, so it's kind of like a Samsung. You can press buttons and figure out what does that mean. You can change your windows down there, assign the run screen names. You can do whatever you want to do. Up at the top, it's going to show you like your cell signal, satellite signal. There's your work switch. That's what that work arrow is over there on the top left. So, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Pro 700, but to set an AB line, you got to go in there really and set a grower farm field. And you got to tell it what implement it's got for it to have the right width so it won't work. It's the same deal here. You select a little farm up there at the top, grower farm field, task, crop type, you put in. Of course, it's up to the grower how well they manage that, which they'll talk more about that with the Afs Connect. Then you come over here, you set up your vehicle and implement, and then that's where you get your swaps with. So while we're on this slide, when you get on there in the tractor, which they've kind of updated these buttons here, but you select the button with the 9 dashes. That one's only got 3. You hit that tractor card. There's everything you can control from the display. So actually, we could scroll that up. There's other stuff in there, transmission. There's other features in there, front end. You can do everything basically that we talked about on the armrest. That's where you go do it in the display if you want to do it that way. I'm not going to bore you with HVAC controls. Now the lights, a lot of people, one neat feature we have, like they'll set memory 1 is all the lights, and then memory 2, they'll turn off 2, 8, and 4. So like when you pull up beside a combine, it's not shining in there and blinding them. You know, but you can select it to whatever you want to do for your application. But that's the most common thing. So we can reassign the remote levers to whatever valve we want. So they're normally, they're red, yellow, and green, and blue. So like if I hooked up a disc wrong, and I should have had my raise be in my number 1 valve, but I was talking on the phone and I put it in number 2. Well, if I didn't want to get out or whatever, I can just go right there and assign the number 1 lever to the number 2 valve, and it will change colors. And then the number 2 lever that was assigned to that valve, it'll actually go dim until I assign it to a valve. But if you ever get in there and it's just a mess, you just hit default and it goes right back like it was. It's just a 20-second deal. So most people really like that. There's your joystick configuration. I don't know if any of that really interests anybody. But you can actually configure some buttons on it. Multifunction handle. Again, it's got configurable buttons. You can change valves down there on the 1 and 2 buttons. Then you can do 5, 6, 7, 8, like I said, whatever you want. Like there's answer call, end call. You could have nudge on your guidance on there. Whatever you want. There's all kinds of options. We could talk about that for 20 minutes. So we're still in the tractor card, and we've now scrolled up, okay? There's the remotes. So, like I said, you can adjust your remotes under the armrest pad, or you can go right here. Probably the neatest thing that we have now, as far as the classic Magnum and a lot of tractors, is we now have a dedicated motor mode. So, every year, there's no telling how many fan motors get blown up because somebody forgets what they're doing and they just go back to neutral instead of pushing it to the detent, letting it spin down. I mean, I may have done that myself. Well, now you can go in there and turn the motor mode on, and there's some more steps with pushing the lever, and it's very simple once I showed you once. But when you turn motor mode on, once you go to the detent, it won't blow the fan up. It automatically just goes to detent no matter what you do. Now, you got to go in there and turn it off to go back to normal hydraulic function. But it's a whole lot more better setup than what we had before, when you just had like a lock on there. You had to remember to go to detent. Once you get your fan hooked up, you turn motor mode on, your man can't blow your fan up. Well, I'm hesitant to say can't, but it'll be a lot harder. Hitch, so draft control, you can set it in there, but then also again, the knob, you can set it under the armrest. 99% of every tractor I ever been on, seen, or heard about, we just always crank the draft control all the way down to the max, and nobody ever messed with it. Some people use that, and it does work. It works really, really well, and it's a shame more people don't use it, but it does work. But most people don't want to go to trouble to set it up. But that's it. So I mean, it couldn't really be any easier to set up. We do have a hydraulic top link option, of course. Okay, headlamp management control. Some people either really love this or some people never mess with it. But basically, we've scrolled up, we've hit HMC, we hit that plus sign right there. Now, you can either sit still and record what you want it to do, or you can hit record when you come to the end. And then once you record and save it, you select which one you want to. When you come to the end, you just hit one button on the multifunction handle. It raises up, fold wings, whatever you want to do. You can also set different timers, different triggers for it. So here's where you set your minimum, maximum RPM. That's kind of boring. Steering rate. When you select fast on that steering rate, if my hand's at 12 o'clock, by the time I make it back around 12 o'clock, that wheel just turns and hits stop. It turns right now. It's really nice for hooking up stuff. Well, depending on who you are, I can't even think that fast, so I got to have it on slow when I'm hooking up something. But it'll turn quick. And when you get over, I believe it's 5 miles an hour, it goes back to medium. which is where you want to run it. Brake assist 21, that's pretty well going to be standard, especially on the bigger Magnums. It works in the background. Most operators aren't even going to know they have it. It'll brake the inside wheel to the way you're turning. So, you're in the mud, you got a big 12-row implement, whatever. Instead of, a lot of times you wind up kind of got to stab the brake a little bit to get the wheel to stop to break the differential over. Sometimes you can ride around, sometimes you don't, right? Well, it modulates to the brake pad, and it'll help it ease around. And it does make it easier to drive. Again, no complaints on that. There's where you can set the auto diff lock to come off and on relative to hitch position or the front end. So when you're going down through the cane fields, whatever, if you want it all locked in, but when you get to the end, just turn it off. You can set the engagement zone. It'll kick out and help you turn around if that's what you want to do. There's different PTO stuff. So, stock cut or whatever. If you want the PTO to kick out when the hitch gets halfway up, it'll do that. Or if you want to just stay on, we can do that too. Suspended front. We can set our ride height on our suspended front end. It won't let you run any lower than 30%. You can run it up as high as 100%. So, I had a guy ask me about ground clearance this morning. If you put it on 100%, it'll get the nose up a little bit. The pump is still going to be down there on the front end. But you could actually transfer a little more weight to the back doing that. And vice versa. If you set the nose down to 30%, it'll transfer a little more weight to the front. So, it's kind of hard to balance to really have a good drawbar pull and a good 3-point hitch pull with weighting. Just kind of the nature of the beast here. So that does help you some. And mainly it's just nice to have the option to select your ride height. Whereas before we couldn't do that. We have a tire pressure monitoring system. It'd go up to 16 tires. So you could put monitors on your wagons, whatever, disc, whatever you want. And they just go right on the valve stem. So you can take them off and on. That's a new option. So there's where you set up your implement. I'm not going to go into that too much. That's what our guidance screen looks like. You can look at that tractor forwards, backwards, from over the top, whatever you want to do. That there, just a side view. So over here, these buttons on the right, that's where you're going to set straight swath, curve swath, whatever. We can just go in there and select the heading. If I'm at 181 degrees, I can tell you set it at 181. Now, do you want to hip like that? Probably not. But, disking, if we want to match up, we can get fairly close. Do it just, quick way. There's your parameters you can monitor there, so you can watch all kinds of whatever you want to watch there. You can set up a user profile, and you can have a manager profile. So you just heard me say you can change all this stuff. Well, I don't want my man to do that. Okay, no problem. Go in there and set your profile and a password, and they can't change everything. Or vice versa. If we run in 24 hours a day, I got day shift, you got night shift, you want it this way, I want it that way. Well, we'll just set our own, you get in there, log in as you. No big deal. So here's where the question mark tab is, which I did overrun too. There's anywhere you see a button in the display, there's a little question mark. A lot of times, if you hit that question mark, it'll pop up and tell you what that means. So, what does this mean? Well, hit the question mark and tell you. Then also up at the top, that's where you would go to see your service manuals, or operator's manuals rather. We can do remote display viewing. You can do it with your Connect account, or the dealer that you choose could do it. And we can choose it down to the level like if you only wanted Opelousas to see it, that's fine. Or if you wanted everybody at Progressive to be able to remote display view, you can set that to whatever you want. And that's all tied into your Connect account. All these tractors come with that PCM modem, which is that little black modem there on the end of the table. You cannot deduct it on the mid-range Magnum or full size, so you're connected. So it's included in the price. Comes with 5-year AFS Connect subscription, so you'll have access to that for 5 years. And I don't get that too far, but that's where, managing all your agronomic data and all that. We can deduct the receiver if you so desire, but a 372 will not run this tractor. It's got to be a receiver like a NAV 900, because the vector receiver, it's basically a blend of the nav controller and the 372. So all the gyroscopes and all that are up there in that receiver. So you got to replace it with something comparable, without getting way off into other third-party options. That's just going to show your cell signal strength. We can do AT&T or Verizon. That's just the Skype lights. Fault codes show up. So the fault codes, they're a little more in depth than maybe they used to be. PCM cannot receive messages from CANs, what that one is. Now, does it go in there and give you step by step, go check pin A, connector X? No, it doesn't do that. But, something like that, PCM cannot receive messages from CAN. Well, and then at that point you might go, well, I wonder if my guidance is working. It might give you an idea. That's pretty much all I have without going too long. Be glad to try to answer any question you have or try to find information for you if you have any questions. If not, we can move on to AFS Connect.